Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dani and today I am here to recommend to you some fantasy and sci-fi books that were my favorite books from 2019. So let's talk about books. I selected 11 books from my favorite books that I read last year, so I didn't want to do a top 10 books of 2019 because I didn't want to have to cut any of these. I really want to recommend all these. I have some middle grade fantasy, I have YA fantasy as well, and YA sci-fi, and some adult sci-fi. The sci-fi ones are mostly adult, but there's one that I would categorize as sci-fi. Do other people categorize that as fantasy? Who knows? Let's start. I have 3 middle grade fantasy to recommend, and the first one is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is a very sad book. I'll say this from the start. This is about a boy who gets a visit by a monster, and it's not the monster that he's expecting. It's a different kind of monster and starts talking to him, and other stuff happens. It's very short, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but this was one of my favorite books of last year. It's also illustrated. It's like I really recommend, if you can, to read the physical edition, this one that has the illustrations in it, because it gives you an atmosphere very different from if you were just reading the words. I love illustrated books, especially children's book. Yeah, I really recommend this if you want just a sad book, something to maybe cry or maybe just to feel a lot of strong feelings about. I really recommend this book. The next two that I want to recommend to you, it's not a surprise at all if you watched any of my videos last year, I think, and it's the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. Both Nevermore and Wondersmith were 5-star books for me. I love the series so much, and I can't wait for Hollowpox. It was delayed until, I don't know, August, and it was supposed to come out in March, and I'm very upset about it, but I'll deal. I'll just reread this until we get to it. Nevermore, the first one is called Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. It's about a girl who is cursed, and on her 12th birthday, she gets kind of kidnapped. She gets taken away to Nevermore by a guy called Jupiter North, and he wants to enter her in the trials to be part of the Wonder Society. It's the most whimsical book I've read in such a long time. I can't even tell. And the story is so amazing. The characters are so good. There's a giant cat in it. And just all of these characters have so much personality. In the sequel, Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow, I'm not going to talk much about the plot because I'm not going to spoil the first book for you, but this just goes deeper into the Wonder Society, and you get a lot of new characters, very amazing characters that we meet here. So yeah, I really recommend the series. I recommend for adults who like whimsical, very fast-paced fantasy, but I also recommend if you have any children in your life, they already read Harry Potter, give them Nevermore because they will love it. And that was it for the middle grade fantasy. Now I have one YA fantasy that I really want to recommend to you. It was my favorite and the only YA fantasy on this list, and I read a lot last year, but it is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Paltredo. This book, it really caught me by surprise how much I loved it, because in the beginning I was struggling a little bit with it, I'm not gonna lie, but it gets to a point and like, I don't know, it's still in the beginning of it, but there's one thing that happens and you're like, what? No, no. And then you just have to keep reading it. And by the end of it, there's so many plot twists. So it's so thrilling, everything that happens in this book. By the end of it, I just needed the sequel. I just needed to know what was going to happen next, because we get so many revelations. Of course, I can't tell you a lot about Yenny, but the story of this book is about Veronica. Mostly, there are a few point of views, but it's about Veronica. She wants to be a Phoenix Rider. She's an animage, so she can kind of control and read animals' thoughts and bond with them and understand them. And Veronica with her sister Val, they're trying to find phoenix eggs to hatch because they're both animages. They both want to be phoenix riders. But that's about how where it stops, how much they the way they want to be a phoenix rider. So for Veronica, it's something about the bond that they have that she has with the animals. She wants an animal to be her friend, to be something that she can rely on, and to just be there for her, and she would be there for the phoenix. So it's just a very pure feeling. And for Val, it's more of kind of like a servant. She wants to be a master of the animal. So they both want to be riders, but in different ways. Again, I'm not gonna spoil more than that because I wouldn't have wanted to be spoiled more than this. But they're phoenixes, phoenixi, phoenix. There's a bunch of phoenix in this book. There is a lot of world building, which I loved so much. A few people I know thought that it was too much world building. For me, it was necessary. Everything that was told in this book was just the the things that we needed to know, the things that I wanted to know so much. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's too much. I say it is too much, but it's in a good way. But I really recommend this if you like YA fantasy. If you like animal companions, I feel like we've been missing on animal companions for so long in fantasies now. If you have any more fantasies to recommend to me that have animal companions, let me know because I really love it. So yeah, read this. And next we have, again, just one adult fantasy that I want to recommend to you from the ones that I read last year. And it's not a new book. The last one already came out last year, and I probably should recommend the last one. But do want to recommend Nevermore by J. Kristoff. This is an adult fantasy. Like I said, it's about an assassin who wants to get revenge on some higher ups in the government who killed her family, and she goes to assassin school to train to be an assassin and to kill these people. This is a very adult book. It's very graphic, both in violence and sex and blood and gore. So it's not for everyone. I do understand that. But if you're okay with this kind of uh, things featuring in the book, I still do recommend it because it's not about the sex, it's not about the violence, it's about Mia's story. And she's such an amazing character. She's such a Gryffindor. She does everything that she's not supposed to do. She's so reckless. I really love her. She's an amazing, amazing character. I read the whole trilogy last year, both Dark Dawn and God's Grave. Well, God's Grave and Dark Dawn. The ending was well, it was expected in a way because they talk about it in this book, but it wasn't expected in the way that it happened throughout the whole series. So I do recommend the whole trilogy, really, really, if you like adult fantasy and if you want to read about an amazing assassin. I do recommend it. One thing that people talk about this book a lot is that they don't like the footnotes. And yes, this book has a lot of footnotes, and it's one of my favorite parts of the book. From the beginning of this book, we know that it's being narrated by someone who we don't know who it is, and we can just see so much personality and just so much sarcasm and irony in this character's voice through the footnotes, especially. It's one of my favorite things when books don't take themselves too seriously, and this is what happens with this book because it's being written by someone, not by J. Kristoff. It's a story that's being told to us. It doesn't take itself seriously, and I just love it. The footnotes are so funny, most of them, and I would really recommend you reading with the footnotes, just because, just like get into the story, get into the mind of this narrator. So I really recommend Nevernight. That was it for the fantasy recommendations, and now we're gonna go to the sci-fi recommendations. I don't have any middle grade sci-fi to recommend to you. I don't know if I read any last year. I did. I read some that didn't blow my mind. So if again, I love middle grade books. If you have cool sci-fi ones, I'd love to read them. Let's start with an YA sci-fi. That's gonna be The Toe by Neil Shusterman. I mentioned that some people categorize this as fantasy. I don't think it's fantasy. Some people also categorize this as a dystopia, and I do think it is a dystopia, but I don't think dystopia is a genre. It's a subgenre. So for me, it is sci-fi. It's a dystopian sci-fi. That's where I always put it. So this is the third book in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. And when the first book came out, when I first read it at least, I heard rumors or read somewhere that it was not going to be a trilogy, it was going to be like a longer series. And I'm so sad that it was just a trilogy because I needed to be in this world for so much longer. This is one of my favorite series of all time. I reread both Scythe and Thunderhead last year, but it was a reread, so I'm not putting it in my favorite in these recommendations. But I do recommend the whole series. I've heard a lot of people who haven't enjoyed this book as much, and I don't know why. You get back into that world. I know that, okay, I can't say that because of spoilers for book two, but because of big things that happen in book two, this book is a little bit different. Ask me in the comments if you read it, what I'm talking about. So I do understand in that sense if they wouldn't like it, but still, we get back to these characters, we get back to this world, and there's so much to be solved. There's so much to learn still and to figure out. This is a huge book, and it didn't take me long to read. Always, Neil Schusterman always makes me read his books so fast because they're so entertaining and so immersive and just so easy to read and just so written for me. It's like, I don't know, I can't be too objective about the series because his writing is just perfect for what I like to read and for the experiences that I like to have in books. That if you want to know my taste in books, it's this trilogy. All of it. They're all 5 stars for me. The ending of the series, it could have gone so many different ways, and I don't mind the way that it ended. Maybe in different ways, I would have been more satisfied in the end, but I think that it ended in the way that it should have ended for everything that was happening, and it was so good. The action starts in this book from the first pages, and it's just so good. So good. Really recommend it all. Really recommend the Arc of a Scythe series, the whole trilogy. And now I want to recommend to you five uh, adult sci-fis that combined are written by two authors. So kind of want to recommend two sci-fi authors for you. The first one was the first book that I finished in 2019. It was an audiobook, so I don't have the physical copy with me, but it was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This book just messed with my mind so much, and I remember I was listening to it at work at some point, and I was just so blown away by what was happening. Just have that image. Not that it affected work or that I have to re-listen to it. It's just I have that vivid memory of the exact point in the book that it messed with my mind. It's a sci-fi about a guy who wakes up one day. I don't like to say too many things about it because I didn't know too many things about it, and I think that's how you're supposed to go into this book. He wakes up in a situation where he doesn't know. He thinks he knows where he is, but his family doesn't remember him. Let's just leave it at that. Very vague, and you're probably not satisfied with this description, but just read it instead of being mad at me. One thing that I like about Blake Crouch from the 2 books that I read from him, so not much, but the 2 books that I read from him is that he takes very real scientifical things and pushes it to a limit that we can't right now, but what if we could? So in a certain ways, it's kind of creepy just to imagine all the things that could potentially happen, which is what happens in this book, and which is what happens in my next recommendation by Blake Crouch, which is Recursion. This is his 2019 novel, and I love the tagline of the book. It says, "You remember it all, but these memories belong to someone else." Right? And that's pretty much what this book is. People start to have what they call in the book false memory syndrome, in which they start remembering this whole other life that didn't happen. They have this vivid memory of, I don't know, a child, a wedding, that getting married, and those things didn't happen in their lives. A lot of stuff start to happen, and people start going crazy because of those false memories, and it just goes from there. And like I said, he takes something very scientific. Everything has a science behind it, but it goes into places that, like, right now it's not possible. What if it was? And even in the middle of the book, he finds like real life examples of how this could have happened, which is again a little bit creepy. But I really, really recommend this book. Both these books by Blake Crouch. I have to read more from him. If all of his books are like this and like mind bending and mind blowing, I need it so much in my life. I just saw that there are some people here. Look, I can do this. I love this cover. This is the UK cover. The American cover is like all bright yellow, which is it's not bad, it's not ugly, but this orange with blue just stands out, and I really love it. The last 3 books I want to recommend to you are by the same author, and the first one was the second audiobook that I listened to in 2019, and it was Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Novelle, and I'm going to recommend it together with Waking Gods by the same author, of course. I'm just gonna hold this one because I don't have the first one. It was an audiobook. I really need Dark Matter and Sleeping Giants in my bookshelves because I love those books so much. But I don't have them yet. Still waiting for Book Outlet to put them on their website so I can buy it. But this trilogy, I haven't read the third one yet. I'm a little bit worried I'm not gonna like it. At the same time, I really want to see how it ends, because this was a trilogy that I enjoyed so much, and I would recommend it to pretty much anyone who likes sci-fi. It's about a girl who falls into a giant metallic hand when she's small, and when she's older, when she's an adult, she ends up studying that metallic hand. And just basically this whole thing is about giant alien robots. Do you need more than this? I have more. It's all told in like files format, so it doesn't go as extreme as Illuminate. If you read it, Illuminate has more different formats. This one is mostly either interviews or just files. So it's a very easy read. The audiobook is full cast. Do recommend the audiobook. I listened to the first one as an audiobook, and I have listened to this one. So I do really recommend it. I have the third one already, and I just have to finish the series because it's so good. And my last book recommendation by the same author is The Test. This is a tiny, tiny short story novella. I don't even know how to categorize this. Even like the font's not too big, the margins are big, so it's very fast to read. I read this on ebook, and then I found the audiobook. I found the signed book. I have 2 books signed by him because he's from Quebec. He's from Montréal, I guess. So it's not too hard to find his book signed. But The Test is another adult sci-fi. It's about a guy who's taking an exam to be a UK citizen, and he's just answering questions. So like at least in the beginning, it starts with like the question that he has to answer, and then his answer, and kind of like a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire format, where he remembers things that makes him answer the question correctly, or makes him have an answer for the question at least. I would say this is very Black Mirror-ish, so if you like Black Mirror, do recommend this book. And it's so short. If this made you want to read this book, just pick it up. You can read it in one sitting, like up to 2 hours, I'll say. It's like 100 pages, so if you take over a minute it's like 104 pages. Not even 2 hours. Really recommend this. And that was it for my first video of 2020. For my book recommendations for you to start your year or continue your year with some cool books to add to your TBR. Let me know if you read any of this. Let me know what you would recommend to me based on my favorite books of 2019. This really represents a lot of what my taste in books is. Not only this, it's not the only thing that I read. I focused this video in fantasy and sci-fi, but I do have a lot of thrillers that I read last year, some that I really loved, like Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, Couple Next Door, which is a backlist book by Cheryl Lapina. I love those books so much. But from fantasy and sci-fi, these were my favorite books of 2019. I just want to remind you to click on the like button and subscribe to my channel. And also, I have a Twitter and Instagram and Goodreads. You can follow me on all those medias. I keep my Twitter pretty updated as I don't have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I can't do community posts. So all my updates usually go on Twitter or on Instagram. And Goodreads is always up to date on what I'm reading and my ratings as I'm reading the books. So do follow me there, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram.